Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. My name is Chris Salem. We hope everybody is having a great week. We are so excited that the show continues to grow each and every week because of the listeners like you coming in each and every week as you embrace the content that we present with our many different subject matter experts sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate your level of a business influence to the next level. We wanted to thank you again. And if there's any kind of content you would like to see on a future show, feel free to reach out to us here at Chris@ChristopherSalem.com. That's Chris@ChristopherSalem.com. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types, an opportunity to meet new people or rekindle old relationships from your past. It is a membership program, meaning it takes all the noise out of social media. No more of those noisy notifications. You get to come in and generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact and share content with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about Beyond the Pitch, unlocking the real secret to engaging buyers. And as you know, here at Business Influencers, we are big proponents of effective communication. Well, that's what you're exactly going to get here today. And today's speaker, his name is Jason Jones, has spent a lifetime mastering the art of communication, from hosting a #1 rated radio show to assisting nonprofits and making record-breaking contributions. He has used his ability to emotionally connect with people to inspire action. For the past 9 years, he has researched the science behind this communication that inspires people to take action. From this, he has developed the adaptive conversations for conscious selling. This is a system that people can learn to navigate conversations with power and confidence. This causes sales to happen with ease and elevates into leadership. He has applied this research to coaching clients, which has allowed them to produce outlier results. And without further ado, we welcome Jason Jones to the show. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm great, Christopher. Thank you for having me on here. It's really fun to be back. So it's really fun to be back in this chair again, even if I'm on the other side of the microphone.
Yes, you were the host, and you did it for several years. And
yeah, it was a fun time in my life.
Well, we love having you here, and we want to just be educated today on communication. There's communication, and then there's communication. And
yes,
many people, even, especially in sales, we think we're communicating effectively, and when in reality, we're not. And that's obviously going to be reflected in when things fall through the cracks, when people don't do what they're supposed to do, sales are not coming around like we thought it was. So there could be a lot of factors with the communication process there. Let's talk about that and talk a little bit about, unlocking that real secret in terms of when it comes to communication for conscious selling.
Yeah, well, let's first take a look at what is communication? When is it actually being effective? And it feels like, how I was raised and taught, and the examples that I had and the role models that I had was communication is when you're talking. And when you're you and I, we're communicating right now because we're doing the talking and other people are doing the listening. And so communication is happening. And that's a really limited view. And it's one that informs the conventions of sales, have a really good pitch, have it really dialed in, put all this stuff in there, right? You're putting it all in a speech and then just hoping that they're going to be a grateful audience and jump to their feet and give you a standing ovation and say, oh, let's do this, right? And those that were really ready to buy before you walked in the door will probably do that, which reinforces the idea that you're doing really well at this and closing at 20% or maybe 30% and feeling pretty good about that. But when we look at what communication, the whole of communication, when we experience it when we experience another person, and we share thoughts and ideas, what I call reality sharing. We start to share a reality instead of just reporting to each other what we see. We start actually sharing a reality. Then other things come into play in that. which is like the feelings that are rising. What is it that we're actually talking about? What does the person across from me care about? What is really happening for them? And what's really happening in this conversation? Like the big question for any salesperson going in is to answer the question, what's really happening here? And that's what there is to listen for. If I just listen to your words, Christopher, we go all over the place talking about, if we were doing a sales thing and talking about something you were challenged with, we'd be just like all over the map, and I might be like throwing in like, oh, we help with that. Oh, we're good at that or this. But then you just feel like I'm trying to sell to you. You don't feel like I'm actually solving anything with you. I'm taking my turn to talk. And so when we include communication is, I'm listening to you in a way that you feel heard, I'm witnessing you in a way that you feel seen, and that your experience of whatever it is you're dealing with is valid. And when that is present, you know what shows up at the party? Credibility, value, and trust. They just show up. They're not do X, Y, and Z to get D. They just show up because now we're like relating and we're connecting. And this is the biggest thing that is missing. Most of us spend most of our time talking to ourselves about how this conversation is going than we do the other person and listening for what's behind the words with them.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. And, talk about a little bit about, like obviously that's where we what you said, we're listening to respond, and responding is always better than reacting. But if we're responding and we didn't really take time to relate and understand, like you said, we're just talking now. We're not really hearing what's really important to that person we're talking to, or what that challenge is that could be better, or what are the results they seek and don't have as it comes up throughout the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we get into a trap we want to inform. I want to teach you, show you, inform you. I'm the expert. And in terms of a sales strategy, it didn't really work that great in the 80s. But in the 80s, there wasn't the internet. There was no way to research anything. So you had to rely on the sales rep to bring you the latest and greatest or whatever's going on. Now we're in the era of processing information. And the better that you are to help someone process what's going on and parse out the accurate information they've collected and the inaccurate information, and to line things up so that they can see something that they couldn't see before, now you're getting somewhere with them and providing them true value. And that you can't get there if I just tell you, so Christopher, I see what you're saying. Here's your problem, and this is how we're going to fix it, right? And then when you hear that, you're like, yeah, that's a possibility. So it just landed like information. Like, oh, there's some more new information to add to all my other information that I still got to kind of process out and figure out. It's not getting me any closer to a confident decision. Whereas if we understand together what you understand and what I understand, then we actually get to a place where we can recognize that the solution, this is a custom match, if it is ethically, right? And that's the ethical part of the salesperson. But that's the big missing. That's the big disconnect that is there between like, oh, that went great and that didn't go great. Like the value of the conversation itself, never mind the product, service, or others. Like first step is that this conversation is valuable and I can see something I couldn't see before.
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta really tap into what's important to them. Otherwise, that rapport and trust isn't established at that point.
Yeah, and I think something that affects what you can, because I heard you say, it's like we need to listen for, but the intention that we bring into the meeting can contract or open what we actually can hear. Right? Like if you come in with lots of conclusions about the person that you're talking to, you're only going to be listening for that. And you'll be cutting everything else out. It will just be cut up. There's only so much bandwidth and opening, right? So if the intention is, well, my intention is to get Christopher into my program today and really impress him and have him sign up, right? You're going to feel that intention, and I'm only going to see what relates to that agenda.
Yes.
Versus in this conversation, I'm really going to understand where you're at, what you're dealing with in your words, in your context, and uncover what is there, and then see what's relevant between me and you, like to do that. And those are like, and that's what then allows me as the person who's making something available to actually see these things and actually navigate in that way. Otherwise, we're really blind to it.
Yeah, it's so true. So true, Jason. So, Jason, what do you suggest? I mean, this is obviously, communication is like a major issue worldwide. I mean, it's
Yes, it
right.
is.
I mean,
It's the
it's in our relationships of all types, personal.
yeah, the source of most of our problems.
A lot of assumptions and speculation and going on, and like you said, we want to hear what our intentions were going into it, so we tune out everything else that's important to what's being said on the other side. What are some of the things that you suggest for people that are, they're looking to raise their level of influence, they're looking to take their business to another level? What would be where would it start with people to start recognizing where that improvement in the communication process, what would be that first step for them?
Sure. Well, in a business context of just straight business communication, where you want to be connecting and aligning with people who need or want what it is that you have, the place to begin is to really research and talk to people and understand the context that your buyer experiences the problems you solve. And I want to share something that's distinct about what I'm saying here, because I'm not saying the problems itself, right? The problems may be we don't have enough leads. However, to get to the experience they're having, they experience a range of symptoms caused by having a constrained lead flow. And so what there is to understand is to understand their world of those symptoms, because that's what there is to presence in the conversation. That's what there is to draw their awareness to, because they may not be thinking about the problem. The problem you solve, Christopher, may not be the one that's a priority for them today.
Yeah.
However, if you're able to presence the problem, it's still one that needs to be solved, and it could elevate in importance with clarity that comes out of the conversation. And that comes from what would follow understanding those symptoms, understanding the context that they think about their challenges and all the stuff going on, right? And so when you're presencing that and bringing that about and bringing that clarity about and an opportunity to like get that resolved once and for all, then that changes the whole conversation. Can I give you an example?
Yeah, please do.
So I work with my primary folks that I work with are fractionals, right? And these are like fractional leaders that are usually going from a corporate career and now they're going into some form of consultancy or business service that they're providing, primarily expertise oriented. And the big challenge that they're running into is people will respond to their outreach, even their cold outreach, and say like, yeah, I'll give you a conversation. Yeah, we can talk. And then they come away, and the way they've described it to me is that they say, well, after the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. Like they don't really know what they want. And they ask me a lot of questions about being fractional and how does that work and how do you pay and how much time do you do? And they're trying to understand fractional. And the conversation should have nothing to do with the fractional part. It should have everything to do with what are you dealing with? Helping them see something they couldn't see before, so they go, Christopher, you can see stuff I can't. You're valuable as an advisor, as an expert. I want you on my team in some capacity. That's what there is to become aware of, right? But they're going in kind of expecting to be interviewed. Like, I'm great. I've got a lot of great experience. What do you want to hear? To kind of go into that interview mindset. Like, what do you need? I'll give you the answers. You just ask. Well, they need someone to help them figure out what the problem is in the first place.
Yeah.
And to help them see, and the value comes in like helping them see. And the way that you're able to do that is because you've done the research. You can see what is happening and say, what about that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, that makes total sense. So important. And, would it be safe to say, Jason, that, when it comes to these shifts in communication, we got to be consistent. We got to, we can't just assume, oh yeah, I just do it. I gotta start. I gotta be conscious of making this shift on an ongoing basis if I'm going to get better and better at communicating, to different people of all different
Yeah.
generational types, all different personality. It could be personality types. Well, it could be whatever that type.
Yeah. Yeah, and and I hear a lot of talk about, well, like there's a lot of things like bank code and disc, and you hear
Yeah,
people say, oh, he's a red, oh, they're a blue, oh, they're a whatever, right? And to me, like that's really constricting because like if I'm like, oh, Christopher, he strikes me as a blue, so I'm gonna talk to him like a blue, which that really shuts down my really witnessing and listening to you to get the whole of you. You're not an avatar. You're a whole person, and when I can start to see that, so what is required is the practice of being really present with someone.
yeah,
Like, so they're really feeling heard and you're really understanding what they're sharing and where they're coming from. So developing the ability to be present. Now, this is personal development work. This is the personal internal work that changes the circumstances externally in terms of like, oh, now I'm making lots of sales because I'm able to create this experience for people in these meetings. Right? And then the other thing besides the listening is the presence and the leadership.
yeah.
So if you stay in the leadership chair of that conversation, which doesn't mean dominating, it just means you're leading the conversation. You are like saying, "Hey, this looks like a good time to transition to looking at if we should work together," or this like, does that look like that to you? You're guiding and leading it versus like answering questions.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I like that approach. Like you're not looking at people as an avatar. You're not putting them into a box. It might be a guide if it needed, but nonetheless, it's not because somebody is an engineer and they might be a C on the disk profile. Doesn't
Right.
mean that they're gonna communicate like a C. You can't just assume that.
Well, and the other thing is that we have to really acknowledge is that, transference is always going on. If I come in to visit with you and I'm feeling really insecure, I'm going to transfer that insecurity to you. And you're likely not going to interpret it as I'm picking up insecurity from Jason. Instead, you're going to be like, I feel uneasy. And then you're going to translate that however you translate that into the conversation that we're having, right? Versus coming in like the confident, calm, assured, clear. That also gets transferred, right? That's why the internal work is so
So
important
important.
to be able to come in and be grounded and be present and be more engaged than the person that you're with.
What are other things people could do to get grounded? Maybe I like to call it maybe like a build their foundation, that they can now learn to be effective communicators.
Yeah, one of the things that I have the folks in my program, Adaptive Conversations for Conscious Selling, doing, is that they have a prep sheet. It's called Preparing for Presence, and in that prep sheet they declare what intention they have for the conversation, and they write it down. It's a very intentional thing. This is like giving instructions to your unconscious behavior. So they write down the intention for the conversation, who they're going to be for them that day. They're like kind of making these declarations, almost unconscious instructions for themselves. That goes a long way. And then the other thing that takes you the rest of the way is don't rush into your sales meeting. Give yourself 10 minutes before to prep, to breathe, to be calm, to get yourself really present to the room, to what's happening, to get yourself out of your head so you can be over there. Because it uses up all kinds of energy when you're competing with your own mind in those conversations. So those kinds of things like really ground you. And then if you really want to take it even further in terms of just living life that way, well then having a stillness practice, doing a meditation every day where you're focused on quiet and stillness as a practice that will transform that for you and your experience of others.
Wow, that's really well put. And when you talk about this on a sales team or any organization of any size, obviously more people it's more of a process, of course. You can't possibly change everyone's communication on a mass level like in a few weeks. But nonetheless, what do you find? Do you find the most success? Obviously, the people that commit daily, have a routine, but also the ones that are, regardless of title, that are showing up and be the example of that change. That's gonna influence their colleagues, peers, people they work for.
I'm glad you brought that up, Christopher, because like most, I don't call what I do sales training. People sell way better after they learn how to communicate in this way. But it's different from sales training because sales training is very process oriented. Follow these steps, follow this process. And what gets lost is those essential nuances of just communicating between like two beings in the actual communication and what is needed in order for you to change like unhelpful default communication patterns is going through a process of integration. Like my entire program is designed as an integration program where people are integrating there's multiple different ways in which they're integrating these new skills, points of view, attitudes, mindset, integrating it into the way that they're being and the way they show up. And you're right, it takes a minimum of 6 months to get like to a competent level. I've tried to do it shorter and it's too much too fast. It takes time for that integration to happen with people as they do it so that their bodies can catch up with their awareness or their bodies can catch up with their knowledge and to bring it all together. So, but how would that look not doing my program, right? Like how it's like, well, I want to do integrating on my own, right? Integrating on your own looks like debriefing your conversations with somebody else that you're having about like, what did I miss? Or what did they share? Or what's something else I could have picked up on reflecting on that. And that kind of practice of noticing expands your awareness of what somebody is communicating. Because most of the time, people are searching for the words. And even if they're confident with their words, because they want to sound good and confident about what they're doing, they're still not 100% about like that, especially if they're processing a problem or trying to get to a solution or be clear and be confident in that. There's a lot of ambiguity in there still for them. So going there with the intent that there's going to be ambiguity here and together we're going to get the clarity. Like that like starts to shift things. And then with the expanded awareness through integration and that practice, then you see more, you hear more in the conversations.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Great, great insight. We hope listeners are getting a lot of value. Again, you're going to get a chance to find out how you can reach out to Jason as well as we come up towards the end of the show. What other things that can you share to kind of really bring everything full circle? How bridging the beyond the pitch? How we can really tap into that communication and bring it to a high level. How that can transform a business. The clients they serve and just the industry overall.
I really think it comes down to a point of view that has become true for me, and that business is about people and human-to-human contact.
Yeah.
Around interests and desires and problems and solutions, but those are all the things that we're doing, but what it's really the essence is that makes anything happen is our ability to connect and resonate with one another. That comes first. That's the first thing that facilitates the everything else. And there's a mentality that you do everything else first. Tell them about our great awards. Tell them about our features and benefits. Tell her about this. Kind of getting in like, oh, you got to know. This will convince you. This will convince you kind of thing. Rather than like, who are you and what are you dealing with? So that you actually could be open to consider these things. So it's human. And then the other thing is that it is emotional.
Okay.
I was on a call for the Chamber of Commerce one time, and the guy was like, keep emotions out of business. And I thought, that's a recipe for failure, of misery.
Up and suppressed, and it comes out.
Right.
Like water. Water is going to find a way to come in.
Right. The only thing when emotion is absent, you have narcissism and manipulation. That's what shows up in the vacuum of emotion. And we are all emotional beings. Yeah, we're all been taught to think, and what we think and what we know is so important, and all the emphasis culturally is put on that. But ultimately, our emotions are driving everything. And so becoming adept at navigating our emotions and other emotions is the pathway to prospering with ease without having to fight for every dollar, without having to bust your butt for every opportunity that you get.
Ah, it's so true. So true. And I know, Jason, you got so much more to talk on this, and we got to have a round two to this show because there's
That
just
would be
so
fun.
valuable information. But really set the stone, the tone and the direction for a lot of the listeners here, those listening later that can now see that communication is something we can't take for granted. It's going to be a game changer, and the ones that really, adopt to get better at it each and every day versus just like, hey, I did it once. No, you got to keep doing it if we're going to see the results long term. I
So
like
true.
First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us out of your
Oh,
busy
my
schedule,
pleasure.
everyone. And if you can let the audience know, like, what is the best way to get in contact with you? What are you up to? And anything that you like to provide or offer them here from being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. That's really generous. So I've got some really cool free stuff that people can take advantage of. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search the Coaching Hour, and you'll find me on LinkedIn. And I have a website too, but I mostly live in LinkedIn. And I have weekly events called Business Development for Fractionals, where we get people together and it's a sharing event. It's not a selling event for me. It's really everyone sharing what they're learning as they're trying to figure out how to sell this in a market where no one is looking for it. And so that's available to join, and it's any kind of fractional. It doesn't have to be a fractional C-suite leader. Like if you're going to do something fractionally, you can come and benefit from that. The other thing I'd like to share is that we have put all of our research that we've done that goes into why this behavioral change model works, and also tools that you can use and take and start implementing in our white paper. And reimagining sales for fractional leaders. And so I'd like to share that as well, that document, because that'll be a real valuable. If this resonated with you on this podcast, on this show, then you're going to like digging in there and getting more value out of that and how to start approaching it.
Absolutely. We'll be making sure that we put that link for that document that Jason talked about to make sure you can download and review. We highly encourage all listeners and those listening later to reach out to Jason. This is a really important area that can take your business sales to a whole new level when you can truly understand the art of communication and how it can work to your advantage to create more impact in the industry that you serve. Again, Jason, thank you so much for the time serving us today.
Oh, thank you, Christopher. It's been an absolute delight being on your show. Thank
Thank
you.
you. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed each and every week into bringing subject matter experts like Jason in to share their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate your level of influence and take your business to the next level. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. And again, reach out to Jason, get in contact with them, and we will see you next week at the same time. Till then, everybody, take care.